Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm just going to walk you through municipal government in Canada. And basically, the reason why I want to do this is there's a lot of misconceptions about municipal government, and I want to clarify some of what's actually going on with municipal government. So this presentation will kind of give you an overview. Now, you're more than welcome to go out to different sites, whether you want to look at the City of Toronto, PO region, look at some of the townships, just get a good flavor of their financial statements and some of the issues facing them, or even talk to your local councillor about some of the things and pressure points you're seeing. I always like to start these presentations as this is one perspective. It's not deemed to be the only perspective, but with the power of the internet, you have the ability to go out and do your own research to see whether or not what are some of the issues facing you locally. Here's a little bit about myself. I'm a CPA CGA by trade. I've spent years in academia, industry, as well as financial solutions. Now, my presentation will give you an overview of powers. I'll talk a bit about the rules, some comments made by mayors. I'll talk about property taxes and some of the revenue flows. So a municipality itself is a corporation. It's a subunit within a jurisdiction. In case Canada, a province. So a city like Toronto is a corporation, but it's a subdivision. So when you start breaking Ontario down, you break it down into counties, you break it down into cities, you break it down in townships. In some cases, you take a group of cities together, a group of areas, and you create a regional municipality. But it's a subdivision to govern local issues. It is set out in the Constitution, just like provincial powers are. The municipal powers are set out too as well, and then they're governed specifically by municipal acts by each provinces in terms of what they can do in terms of revenue collection and some of the other issues around protective services that rule those areas. There's also within Ontario, which is a unique situation, is they created a Toronto Act specifically giving more powers to Toronto in terms of revenue and different aspects. This kind of gives you an idea in terms of what they're responsible from transportation. Now, education, we need to be careful here. The provincial governments typically fund that, but there's a portion of the property taxes that go into education. Transportation, mid-sized to large cities typically have transit systems, buses or subways or rail systems. That's part of it. They manage local issues like firefighting, police, protective services. They may sign agreements with the OPP to cover that policing area, and that's certain things as well, and you need to bear in mind as well. Now, they're governed by accounting rules too, and I won't get into all the specific about accounting rules, but they have to prepare an annual report, financial statements. They also have to prepare what we call a statement of reporting principles that govern certain ratios that you'll see in the financial statements. But you're more than welcome to go out to like the City of Brantford, City of Ottawa, City of Vancouver, City of Calgary. Go look at provincial, not provincials, but different municipalities or townships as well. The main sources of revenue for municipalities are user fees and property taxes. Now, grants they'll get in as part of when I get into the Build Canada Fund as well as the gas tax fund, or any sort of local grants the provincial government will provide, but it's not the biggest piece of their budgets. What is the typical cost? Protective services, parks and recreation, transit, and public works. Now, this is where we want to talk a little bit about some of the issues. Now, I'm not just going to pick on the mayors in Vancouver and that, but I want to talk about the overall flow here. Now, the municipalities themselves are cash crunched. They don't have a lot of extra money laying around due to different issues and setup. Now, that being said, they also have their agenda that they're trying to push in terms of their policies and certain things in terms of statements. So anytime you start dealing with oil, gas, or anything like that some mayors may not agree with because they have their own view on, say, climate change perspective, you're going to see certain things and issues come to boil here. And that's all I'm doing with these quotes, to kind of get you an idea where some of these local politicians stand. That being said, the biggest portion of budgets, and we've seen that, is property taxes. So resource-based industry pays property taxes. So if a pipeline's being built through a rural area or into a city, it's actually going to be paying property taxes as it comes through that area. That's something that's not discussed. What do cities need? They need money. If they need money, so why are they not looking at the property tax aspect and see how it brings it in terms of stabilizing their local revenue sources? That's a question you might want to ask your alderman why he's doing that. The second point is businesses tend to pay higher mill rates compared to residential. So if you've got business investment and you're building a new liquefied natural gas plant, or if you're building a new food processing plant, or you're building a new forestry mill, they're going to pay higher rates. That's property taxes. That's the revenue coming into the municipality that supports local issues. Why is that not discussed? That's another thing you may want to bring up with your alderman. Now, nothing's really talked about in terms of the funding. Okay, so there's committed funding already in place before we had a new government selection, and that's about 36 billion, or about 3.5 billion, 3.6 billion over 10 years that's flowing through to the municipalities. That's money to support transit. That's money to support wastewater treatment. That's money to support bridges. Is it enough? Probably not. But the token point is the municipalities themselves have their own commitments as part of their cash flow that they're going to invest in infrastructure. The provinces will back some of it as well as part of their overall strategy when they collect the income tax dollars. That's a piece of it. Now let's talk about the new government. The new government's made a $120 billion commitment. It's not all going to infrastructure. Some of it's going to social housing. Some of it's going to green technology. So now they're going to dictate federal policies down to a municipal level how they're going to build wind turbines or solar. Transit, some of that money is going into transit projects, big projects, whether that's bus or subway. So that's the think of it. When you see the 120 billion focused on it, it's not necessarily all going to export driven, and exports are key to an economy. Exports drive revenue. Driving revenue drives more money that goes in the pockets of government that can be allocated to social programs, whether it's healthcare, education, or even back into infrastructure. But that's never discussed. Why? Because it's easy to play the pandering for votes without going into detail and specifics about programs or how you can better leverage funding. What are the issues facing municipalities? The high cost of government, particularly in protective services, fire and police. Arbitration settlements, and how do I say that? Well, if police and fire in Hamilton get a settlement, they'll compare it to Toronto. And when they compare it to Toronto, that puts pressure on municipal budgets to match. Pension funding. There's a huge issue even at the municipal level with underfunding. They're going to have to map that out. Okay. Now I could take a step back further on protective services. A lot of smaller communities outsourced their police protective services to the OPP. Now you're a captive audience for that cost. So if they increase that cost as a multiplier of 6 to 7% higher, that's going to eat in the municipal budgets. It means less money for roads, less money for other things, parks and recreation, to support those local issues. Why is that discussed? So you can easily say there's issues, and there are. But what you can't say is that it's all on the federal government level, or it's all that we don't want economic growth. Because in a nutshell, to grow revenue sources, you need a strong economy. When you start putting up policies that do not help grow an economy, then you're actually stabbing yourself in the own foot for that revenue to bring back into your municipalities, because it starts at the federal level, from federal income tax collection, corporate tax, personal income tax, GST, commodity taxes. All that stuff comes into play into a bucket. That bucket then is reallocated out. So if you're struggling with economic growth and pushing projects that are not going to bring the economic value back, then you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, because that revenue won't flow back. So the critical aspect I always try to tell people is don't listen to all the rhetoric from media. Don't listen to the rhetoric from politicians. Do your own research. And as you see with this particular screen, you'll actually see links to different trends. You can go out and watch my YouTube channel, because I deal with a wide range of policies, from economic to government policies. And it's up to you to kind of educate yourself. Do not take people at face value, but do your own research. Thank you.